Come on down. Look how things change. You go away for a month and everything's different. Ghost Town, this end of the site, this is the south end of our site, has been pretty much put to bed for the winter. And you'll notice it's literally a ghost town. A little bit of tidying to do yet. Most of the stuff is under the tarps, right over in this area and over there. And we finished up our digs with this tarp, so almost all of our gear is right there, so that if we decide to start in the spring right there, it just peeled off and there's our goods. But the action that we're about to take you to is down on the north end of the site. So we're going to head up there, and once we get there, I'll share with you a little bit more. So hang out with us. Welcome to the ancient village dig site, and thanks for coming along. We have passed through spring, we've passed through summer, we've actually passed through fall, and we're in November, and it's just down the road. It's going to be snowing before you know it. Hunting season is going on right now for the youth deer hunt, and next week the adult deer season will be full effect statewide in the state of Ohio. So here we are on the north end. If you take a peek at our tarps, what we did today, we pulled one of the tarps back. We're going to go over there and take a look together. This is where we ended up. Our last dig was over there. We have material that we'll be showing you in a minute. But what's nice about that is you can actually see where I talk about profiles and features. So we have a profile, and you can compare the yellow wall with the darker brown chocolatey soil to the left. On the left, there was a lot of habitation, a lot of stuff going on. To the right, it's near virgin soil, little, hardly any prehistoric activity. So the dark chocolate soil, we're going to go over and take a look. I'm going to point some things out, and then we'll come back and look at some of the treasures that came out of the ground. So talk to you in a minute. Oh, hey, we're moving. Okay, we're up close. And I want to show you that the profiles and the features. Profile is just a cross-cut. A feature is when things are starting to happen. And so notice that we have this really deep charclet right here, but it goes down. It cuts down in right here. It goes down right there. And right there, can you see that? That is a thinning flake from one of the fire pits right here. I'm going to put him up here. So this is what we're doing. There's even some bits of charcoal. Can you see this? Right here. Look, and right here. Those are remnants of charcoal. This is blackened from some of the charcoal and the stains seeping down into the ground. But over here is where we finished up. We're not quite done. And the fire pit was here, and we moved in. We went as far as we needed to go west to tell us that we knew that we had the pit done. However, if you look this direction, you still have this chocolate brown. It takes a nice dip right here, and it's mottled. The chocolate is mottled throughout this, and there's little bits of charcoal in it. So to complete this fire pit, which we'll do later this winter, we're way over 80% done with it. We will continue and knock this out a little bit later. But this is where we finished, and now we're going to go over and take a look at some of the goodies that came out of the dig. So profile, the cross-cut features, or where the actual prehistoric activities were taking place. Compare this color with this color over here. And now we're getting down below the zone, way below the habitation zone. And up here is a little bit of the habitation layer. And even here, some charcoal, here and here. So, and there's charcoal, little bits of charcoal all the way along here. So we're going to shut the camera off, and you can join us in a minute over at the sifters. Thanks a lot for keeping up. And I got to keep moving because it is cold out here. And it seems appropriate because our first video that we shared with you was us freezing in a field in a floodplain. And we're going to end freezing at the dig site. So come on in and I'll show you some goodies. We were looking at that fire pit, and this container represents the material that came out of that fire pit. Now there was a lot of stuff that came out of there, but I'm just going to show you a little bit. I love these containers because they can isolate the stuff for each of the individual fire pits. So as I open it up, I'm just going to point. We have some just shards of pottery right here. We have a, do you remember what we call this? This is a rim shard, okay? And we know that these are tempered, no shell tempering. These are all sand tempered. And we feel very confident that we're looking at Adena, and there's a blend, a crossover between the Adena and Hopewell on this village site. So we have pottery, we have just different pieces of flint, thinning flakes, retouch flakes. A lot of these have been resharpened to make small tools. This little area right here are actually specific flakes where they did use a little side and they made a particular tool out of it. Coming over here, learning to recognize things. Now I know this sandstone doesn't belong on the site, and my excavator, Jeff, when he picked it up and wiped it off, he goes, "Oh, what have we got here?" Well, we looked it over and we could see that's prehistoric. Do we know what they were doing with it? Absolutely not. But we can isolate it and recognize it as an artifact. And just on the heels of this is another fire-cracked rock. So whether you're on a dig site or out in a field looking for arrowheads, you got to turn your fire-cracked rocks over. Look at this. Can you see the scars from pounding? This is a hammerstone, a large hammerstone that was actually in the fire pit, and it exploded. And this is the result of washing, looking at it. Another neat piece in here. Interestingly enough, we know that red ochre was used by a lot of different cultures in Ohio. And when this came out and I picked it up, I'm looking at my fingers like, man, there's like red ochre, iron or something all over me. And so we cleaned them, and sure enough, red ochre remnants on this. Extremely piece of rock that's full of iron, and there's polish marks on it where we can see they're trying to get the red ochre off of it. And still some remnant of the red ochre. Some large blanks, some first stage preforms, a couple what is it's. This is a what is it. It looks like a kidney bean. It's as light as a feather. It's been heavily cooked. Can't answer that. I don't know what it is. And we have charcoal, and we have some bone. And that's just some of the stuff that's come out of this pit. Now, specifically, we have an Adena point, and this is kind of neat because in Ohio, one of the things that makes our state special is our Flint Ridge flint. And there are outcroppings of Flint Ridge flint in other places of the state, but the majority is near a town that we call Newark, Ohio. This is a great Adena point right here, and if I had a backlit source, you'd be able to see very much through this thing like that. And then we have another point, but if you look at the style, just look at the blade part of both of these points, okay? I'm going to hold them up like this. This is an Adena. We identify it by the base. Base is missing on this one, but what about geometric shapes? We have kind of a triangle here, but look at this one. We have a side, a side, a side, and a side. We call this a pentagonal point. So as an archaeologist, I'm interested. This predates this. We've already established the fact that on this incredible village site, there were many, 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 many villages and camps going on over the years, the millennia. Well, let's take a look at this pentagonal point. The base is gone. So as an archaeologist, did I break the base off when I was digging? The charred or the heat results of the fire are the same here as they are here. So this base was probably lost or broken off before it went into the fire. And then with a really nice hand lens, we're able to see the little pock marks on here that you get oftentimes when it's been in a fire. This has been cooked so hard, so well, so long, that we cannot even distinguish what flint it was. If this is Coshocton, if it's Nelly flint, if it's Flint Ridge flint, don't know. But if I snapped it in half, we could look inside and see what kind of flint we're dealing with. But I'm not going to do that. Here's another cool thing, and this might be hard for you to look at and figure it out, but we're going to do the best we can and just hang in there with us. It looks like a little hunk of flint. I'm going to turn him over. I'm going to turn him over again. And what is interesting, and I hope you can see, these are what we call channel flake scars. Right there's one. They're actually all along here. Channel flake scars. And very indicative, in this case, of a core. And this one is so small that it's called an expended core. They got everything off they could and they gave it a pitch. And as you read about these cores, you'll learn about the angle they needed to be able to strike and get their blades off. This angle has got so acute that they were no longer able to drive the blades off. They could get little guys, but they needed much longer blades and they just couldn't get it. So this one ended up in the fire pit. But what I wanted to call to your attention, I've got my thumbnails between these scars, these channel flake scars. They're very narrow, very narrow. And that's important because when you're out walking in your fields and you find chips and you think, wow, I wonder if this is a blade. Keep in mind that when you're working with Hopewell and oftentimes the Dina, these guys are really narrow and not always long. They can be short. So what I did, I brought a really well-established Hopewell core that came out of a county just south of here to show you the width of these scars and the width of these scars. Now these are a lot longer than they are on this piece, but nonetheless, same culture, okay? And flakes, scars can differ. We've got another core that came out of a field very close to here. And let's look at our flake scars here. Here's one. Here's one. Here, here, here. And these remnants of blades, flakes taken off. So let's take this over here and look at some of the blades. Now, am I going to need to tip this a little bit so you don't get reflection? Are we good here? Okay. If you look at these flakes that are missing, I can lay this down beside some of these, and any one of these could have come off right here. And this particular site, over the years, has probably yielded close to 1,000 that I've picked up of these types of flake blades, and then blade knives. They're all uniface, all right? They're all uniface. So it's really helpful to look at cores, especially if you find one from your field, because that'll cue you in on the flake knives or the blade knives that you want to pick up. And it's troubling because sometimes you don't get a complete one, you get a partial one. And those you're just going to have to learn. And I wanted to, this is so exciting. I miss you guys. It's been a long time since I've been with you. But I think I'm going to wrap it up right here. And this has just been me, a little silly and a little goofy. But just to get an idea about stone tools, they aren't always big. In my experience, in my fields, are that most of them are small. Golf ball, hammerstones with multiple hit surfaces. This one reminds me a lot of an abrader that may have been used at one time as a hammer. This is a flint hammer with hundreds of percussion hits all around it. But look how little. And this is a little bit larger. We have our main rock, but these two ends are gone. These are just completely gone from all the work. So I brought these as a reminder because a lot of you are going to be getting out during the winter months, and depending on what county you're from, you should have some walking. And a real quick look at the last fire pit that we were in before we shut this down was a couple items that came out of here. Now there's some points in here or whatever, but of interest was this rim sherd, which differs quite a bit from some of the other rims that we've been getting. And I will get the other rim out. Can you see the difference? One has a lip and this one does not. Typically here, the Adena don't necessarily have the lip. However, we have a great crossover between the Adena and the Hopewell on this site. So indeed, this could be just the interim period of one culture or the other. I personally think they were just one basic culture. But either way, two different rims that came out, and this is the the piece that really made my summer. This is a rim of a large steatite vessel. And there are some wonderful books that have been written on steatite pottery. And this one is so long that if this were to be ovate, it would be so big that they would not be able to carry it because of the weight. This was probably more of a semi-rectangular pot. But either way, these rims that we're finding on this site are all indicative of the steatite, the soapstone. And interesting, you've heard me share this, and I want you to remember, always look for context and look for patterns. We have no explanation, but what we do when we get into our Adena fire pits, we often, very often, will find one or two shards of steatite. Now, culturally speaking, this culture, the Ashtabula points and the steatite blends right into the early Adena. So we're not surprised that it's here, but what's surprising us is that every pit seems to have one or two shards with us. So, man, I don't want to let you go. But thanks for coming. Again, these are just different fire pits, the last pits that we worked on before we shut the site down. You got to see where this stuff came from, and we're probably going to loosely cover this because we know we're going to have a few more warm days in the 40s before the big freeze hits Ohio. And so we will have some time to get back out and dig a little bit more over there. And next spring, we'll show you the conclusion of that fire pit. So a lot to think about. If you get out this winter and you're walking between the beans and corn and wherever the rice fields down south, remember that knives aren't necessarily long and narrow. They can be flakes, and they can be like a post-toasty flake, a Kellogg's cornflake flake, okay? And but find your cone of percussion. Remember, we're dealing with uniface flakes. Find your cone, look at the polar opposite end for anything that tells you this was an artifact, and you'll see evidence. This will help put it all together. Oh man, this is just too fun. Thanks again. Thanks for coming, for getting cold with us. And man, I can't wait to see you again. Have fun.